Good afternoon and welcome. My story is not over yet. My name is Paula VanGuilder, founder of PA's Way. Stop the stigma with mental health and addiction and time to educate. Anxiety disorder is characterized by a specific fear of places and situations that the person feels anxious or panic, such as open spaces, crowded places, and places which escaping seems difficult. This is agoraphobia. After speaking with someone in the mental health field, this is a huge crisis right now. Think about the pandemic. People that live in fear with public for the first time switched gears and life changed. Many can't go back to the workplace. When I hear some people say, so many jobs out there, people are just lazy, really grinds my gears. Many are having a hard time getting from point A to point B. Mental health and addiction were already an issue prior to COVID. Think about now. So show a little bit of compassion. We're in a different world now, and many loved ones are in pain. Be that person to make a difference. At this time, I would like to introduce Ryan Palmer, a local police officer with Ludlow Police Department that is running for sheriff for Windsor County. Sorry, Ryan. Welcome.
It's okay.
So again, I want to welcome Ryan. And Ryan, a few questions I have for you. Can you give us a little history about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
And I really appreciate how passionate you are about helping folks dealing with all these different mental health issues that certainly have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Social media plays into that, so many things. And people kind of sometimes feel like they get left to the wayside. So thank you for your service, and thank you for doing what you're doing to make the community a better place.
Thank you.
About myself. So I grew up in Windsor. I spent most of my police career there. I started in New Hampshire in 2006. I am the chair of the Windsor Select Board. I've been serving on that for 2 years, and back when I was about 23, I actually served my first go-around there. But I've been in Ludlow. I'm a full-time certified police officer. I've been in Ludlow since the end of 2017. I've served in many different roles throughout my career, whether it's detective, I investigate right now child sexual assaults and other things like that for the town of Ludlow. I've been a school resource officer. I'm certified school resource officer, active shooter response instructor. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm a field training officer, so I'm very big on training other cops and making other cops better. So many different roles there. I'm also a veteran I served with the United States Air Force, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm also a justice of the peace, so a lot of different things there. I've been the president of 2 different police unions here at Ludlow and in Windsor, so very well versed in labor relations and contractual stuff. I've also run my own businesses, so I had a business in Windsor years ago, and I also do a little DJ thing on the side. So that's a little bit about myself. Hopefully it wasn't too long-winded.
That's fine. What made you want to run for Windsor County Sheriff?
And that's a question I get asked a lot, right? Because it's very important. Why does a politician, a quasi-politician, want to be in that role? And for me, it's about changing the way we provide law enforcement to rural Vermont and improving that. And I've seen this department with so much potential that I think is going basically wasted. We have a crisis with staffing in law enforcement, as we do in many other professions, but in particular law enforcement. Most places are lucky if they're at 50% staffing, right? So I'm looking at it, this is a transformational time in law enforcement. We've seen all the bad publicity. We've seen some real positive changes though in the career, and I'm seeing an agency that could so much better serve our rural communities in Windsor County. And I have the vision and the passion and the drive to change that, and really that's why I'm running, because now the time's right and I feel like I'm in a good position to kind of take this department into the future.
Yeah. When you say ending policing for profit, what does that mean?
Well, so again, a question I've been asked a lot.
Yep.
Because it's kind of my campaign motto, right? End policing for profit, people over profit. Sheriff's departments in Vermont are a quasi-business. And as maybe you know or you don't know, but we don't have a real strong county form of government that you see in other states, down south or out west in particular, where sheriff's departments are kind of king, right? And the county is very important. Here in Vermont, our sheriff's departments are funded primarily by the state, in the sense that the state pays for the sheriff's base salary, which is $94,000 currently. And it pays for, in Windsor County, 2 deputies, which they're called state-paid deputies, who are quasi-state employees, quasi-county employees. And they're statutorily required to do things like serve civil paperwork. So when we say civil paperwork, maybe divorce papers, subpoenas, evictions, those type of things. Mental health watches, when somebody's in crisis and they're brought to an emergency room, the sheriff's departments are statutorily required at times to provide security. The transportation of prisoners who are in the system from like court to back to the jail or vice versa. And those are some of the things that the sheriffs are statutorily tasked to do. However, they can contract out their law enforcement services because they're certified law enforcement officers. And in Vermont, a certified law enforcement officer has the same powers across the board, and we're able to provide service throughout the state. So Vermont's unique in the fact that the sheriff can contract his services out. The sheriff himself also gets 5%, is able to collect 5% of a contract. Say it's a $200,000 contract, the sheriff can be compensated $10,000. So say he provides service for the town of Plymouth a few years ago, they were about at 180, let's call it $200,000. The sheriff's cut was $10,000. So people say, is that what you mean when I say policing for profit? And I said, well, a little bit, but I think $10,000 for a department head, to come in and be the chief law enforcement officer for a municipality, I don't think that's unreasonable. But what I do think is unreasonable is the way that the sheriffs have been contracted in a lot of these small towns, right? A lot of these towns have hired the sheriff's department with a primary focus to write traffic citations, to generate revenue, to pay for the police, to then write tickets to generate revenue. So it's this cycle where, and there's several news articles out there about, it was Plymouth and Bridgewater were 2 of the top 3 towns in the state where tickets were written. And again, traffic enforcement, traffic citations are a part of public safety, but we should be doing them to modify behavior. We should be issuing traffic citations to modify behavior, get people to slow down, not for the sole purpose of we need to generate some revenue to pay for us to write for traffic citations. And a lot of these towns that the sheriff has covered in these scenarios, they don't provide criminal law enforcement service. A call for service comes in, oftentimes they don't respond. I've had to respond from Ludlow because it was 5 or 10 minutes before closing time, and we thought there was an active home invasion, and the sheriffs didn't have anybody there. They'd gone home, and they weren't going to respond, so I responded. Because that's what we should be doing out there, trying to catch criminals. So for me, it's shifting the scope of these contracts, the ethos, the doctrine, whatever you want to call it, the mission statement of the sheriff's department, to transition into this modern professional law enforcement agency and away from this idea of all we do is traffic enforcement, right? There's a lot of other things the sheriffs do. They do civil standbys, like I said, evictions. They provide escorts for wide loads on the highways. You've probably seen them. Construction details on the interstates and stuff. They provide the law enforcement support there. Courthouse security in Windsor County, they provide some of that. So, I mean, we're going to do all those things. I'm going to try to streamline it and make it even more efficient. But for me, at the end of, to answer your question in the very to condensed form, it's shifting the direction and the scope of those services that we provide to more all-encompassing, holistic law enforcement, I like to call it.
Makes sense. What are your plans for the mental health and addictions problems that we have now, just in Windsor County alone?
Sure. We've all seen it. We've all known somebody. We've all suffered. We've all dealt with addiction and serious mental health issues, right? Yeah. I can't believe there's anybody out there today that hasn't been affected in some way, shape, or form. So one of the big things I'm focused on is changing culture in the department, right? We're not necessarily always the agency that deals with folks. They're either in crisis or dealing with substance abuse issues, but we always end up there. We always end up involved. So I think one, really focusing on training. I went through the FBI Crisis Negotiator School about 2 years ago. And it was a 40-hour school, week long, very career changing for me. The way I dealt with people, the way I understood crisis, right? Crisis can be caused by a lot of different things, but understanding that you can't have rational thought and high emotions, and they can't coexist, right?
Exactly.
So how do we interact with people? So training our officers to be crisis negotiators, to use de-escalation techniques, right? To better understand what it's like to be in crisis, you know? Also better understand substance abuse issues, right?
Yeah.
Because those two things are very much entangled. And so training, and again, cultural shift is a big thing there. But also, what I've seen in my career is that we're very siloed, and we'll call it the criminal justice system for lack of a better term, but we're very siloed. Police do this, courts do this, prosecutors do this, you know, the mental health support agencies do this, the jails do this, community organizations do this, but breaking down those silos, breaking down those walls. I enjoy reading. I enjoy listening to books. I'm in a car a lot, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And listening to some of the generals and admirals that fought the global war on terror in the early stages, the Department of Defense was like that, very much siloed, and everyone did their own thing. And to fight things like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, we had to, you know, refocus our mission and really redesign how we were organized. And I'm not trying to compare the police to the military, but there's some good lessons there. And breaking down those silos and working much closer with our partners. And I know we've talked about this outside of the studio here, but and I think you'll get into this, one of the big issues for me is hiring the right social worker / victims advocate to be part of the department. And that, I think, could be really significantly impactful. I've used state police is doing it. Windsor and Springfield have contract social workers, but really embedding that person into the department.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. That's where I'm a huge advocate for. Do you believe all the law enforcement agencies should, you just basically answered this, should have a social worker or victim advocate available to them or attached to larger departments, even though you just answered that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But let's dive into that a little bit more, because, again, it goes back to this siloed mentality, right? And having someone with a different perspective, different training, different background, I think is incredibly helpful. And also, we deal with so many things from a law enforcement standpoint that are not necessarily criminal. You know, they have maybe some criminal elements into it, but maybe it's just somebody that needs some help. And we're not always the best, you know. I don't have a PhD. I don't have, you know, I'm not a licensed psychologist or any of this. I don't need to be. I don't need to know how to diagnose schizophrenia. But I do need to be an expert in dealing with people in crisis and getting them help, right?
Spot on.
So having somebody on board that is an expert in all those things, but can help elevate and train and build our officers into the point where they are experts in crisis, or dealing with people in crisis, dealing with people with substance abuse issues. And as the police, law enforcement, sheriff's department, whatever you want to call us, we interact with people oftentimes in their worst, in, you know, at their worst, at their lowest points in their lives. We should be the conduit to direct those people to get help, to get, not those people, we are those people. We've all been there. We've all been in low points in our life, right? But as law enforcement, we're there. We're the ones that call, we're our call. We're the ones that show up, right? And we should be the conduit. We should build, again, it's breaking down walls, it's being involved in your community, it's knowing your community partners. I really want to give a shout out to Melanie and the crew at Divided Sky Foundation. I think they're taking this holistic approach to rehabilitation, and having those connections to go, hey, you're in trouble, I know the person to call, here it is. Because, you know, when's the best time to get somebody help? It's when we're dealing with them initially, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they've been arrested, whatever. If we can build a system where we can get them into help at that low point when they're ready, and not let them get back out
when they already are falling.
Right, and I
Absolutely.
think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Do you think law enforcement agencies need to take a stronger community policing agenda?
So I look at law enforcement, you are the community. We shouldn't be viewed as an occupying force. We are part of the community.
Right.
And community policing has become kind of a buzzword, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, maybe it's a little hollow. For me, again, it's changing that culture and building a culture in a department where my officers are out in the community. You're part of the community. You're assimilated into the community, whether it's just getting out of your car, stopping into the store, having a sandwich, chatting with people. Those Coffee with a Cop programs, they serve a purpose, but I think I want my department to focus on coffee with a cop every day. You're having coffee with a cop because he's in the Cumberland Farms, he's in the Sunoco, the local, the Barnard General Store, the Brownsville Butcher, he or she are there interacting with their community. So there's a lot of programs that I want to get involved in. And again, you should be mentors to the youth. If you go to my website, you'll see I've got this kind of three-prong approach to policing. And one of those is at-risk youth engagement, and not just at-risk, but youth engagement as a whole. Whether that's formally being actually introduced, as a school resource officer into the schools, or if it's just stopping in, saying hi, reading a book in a classroom, kids are playing on the playground. My all-time favorite picture of myself, and some of it because it was 60 pounds ago, but was playing football with kids on the playground. And some of it, awesome. I scored 6 touchdowns.
Very proud of you.
Might have been there in 3rd grade, no big deal. But going out and organically interacting with your community is incredibly important. And not only are we building trust with our community and building strong relationships, but it also serves a purpose from a law enforcement standpoint. People are going to get involved and help problem solve in their community.
Yes.
They're going to feel comfortable reaching out and saying, hey, Ryan, I know who did this. Or, hey, I think there's a problem over here you should look into. If you are this stoic, unapproachable person that sits in a car 12 hours a day and just writes people speeding tickets, you don't build those relationships. So the community policing aspect that's the culture I want to build. That's the shift I want to make there.
What do you see as the biggest issue facing law enforcement in Vermont? Shortage, probably.
No, so there isn't one biggest issue. There's several issues, right? There is this perception, these negative perceptions and negative connotations of the police that some of it was brought on by ourselves, and we need to work harder at rebuilding law enforcement in Vermont. We need to work harder on those community outreach, those community policing programs. We need to build trust in the community. Yeah. We need to work really hard to make sure that we are providing top-notch service. There is a staffing crisis. We need to be creative on how we recruit people and finding people that want to serve their community and getting them on board and convincing them that, hey, this is still a really good job. It's an honorable profession. This is a profession where you can absolutely 100% change people's lives in a positive, there is, I don't have to tell anybody in Windsor County, there's a lot of substance abuse or substance use issues that have a incredibly negative impact on our community. There's a lot of different things that we need to do to focus on that and change that. And again, I'll go back to my 3-prong approach where at-risk youth engagement, keeping kids out of the system. I tell people, if you've got a broken pipe and water spewing everywhere, you don't just stand there with a bucket for the rest of your life. You try to turn off the water and fix the pipe. Yeah. And what we're doing now is we're just kind of standing there with a bucket and letting it fill up, throwing out the window. Keep doing that. We need to slow down the flow of criminals into the system. We need to be involved with young kids, right? and change the trajectory of their life.
Yeah.
And if it's only 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20, it's still better than doing nothing.
Absolutely.
When I was a kid in Windsor, the whole Upper Valley, we did this thing called Kids and Cops, and it's a program that I'd like to resurrect and work with some of my good friends who are very experienced school resource officers. Crystal Simons over in Claremont, who's one of my first FTOs. She's got a hell of a program. I think it called it Red and Blue program for a summer camp for kids in Claremont. Chief Jen Frank in Windsor has always been phenomenal with our cadet program and those type of things. So these are some things that I want to bring to the county. But this Kids and Cops program, we used to go around and collect like baseball cards of your local cops. And at the end of the summer,
fun idea.
Yeah, and at the end of the summer, all these departments brought kids from their communities to Dartmouth College, where they got to interact with Division I Ivy League athletes. So not only did they Division I college athletes, they're Ivy League athletes, so they're scholars, incredibly intelligent people. And you got to play football, softball, baseball, and then you had this big barbecue. So resurrecting a program like that, where we can show kids that there's so much more to life than, a lot of these kids are stuck in poverty, they're stuck in homes where maybe there's one parent, maybe there's no parents, maybe there's substance abuse, there's physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse. If we can show them that there's so much more to life, you can get out of this. And we're those positive mentors. That's incredibly important to me. So, I think the fourth part, or the fourth problem that I see is training. I don't think we do enough quality police training in Vermont. And I've taken some proactive steps in Ludlow over the last couple of years of bringing world-class trainers to Ludlow and to provide training that we would not have seen before. So a lot of things there that we can unpack, and I'll keep going all day. But
no, I love it. I remember the first time I met Ryan, and your interaction with kids is amazing, spot on. And I remember seeing you was at some function up in Okemo. And you're with one of our other local officer friends. And remember when I really started watching you, how your approach is and your focus, I was like, he's awesome. So when I sat down with a friend of ours and she knows I'm very big into mental health and addiction, she said, Paula, talk to Ryan. And I'm just, after hearing everything that you say and watching everything that you've done, this is huge for me because we need a change like you, because I am a mom of an addict. I am a mother of mental health. And I know a lot of people don't want to come out and talk about it. And personally, I'm right out here and I don't care. There's people that are suffering really bad right now. And we are literally in the worst crisis than anybody can imagine. And I'm listening to mental health providers that have even requested, Paul, you'd be really good working in the ER, helping people. I'm like, yeah, that's not what I want to do. But people need to be ears. But she even stated, she goes, we are getting in a situation that we're going to have a hard time getting out of. And this is a mental health person. And there is numbers like 988, more stuff that they've tried. And we understand that. But we're just in a tough thing. So I thank you for joining me today. But is there anything else that you want to add?
And just to kind of touch on that, we have to kind of change our approach to how we deal with both serious mental health issues and substance abuse. And a couple things more I want to touch on. There's still, in law enforcement, another big thing for me is officer mental health. We've talked a lot about the external mental health components, right? But inside, there's still a lot of stigma with officers focusing on their own mental health and wellness. So that's a big part for me. I've talked to at least 3 different providers on, hey, what do you think are some of the best practices we can employ from a department standpoint, to take care of our officers? Because if you have somebody in your department who's dealing with whatever, whether it's substance abuse, alcohol is a huge issue in law enforcement, or it's mental health trauma. We're exposed to so much cumulative trauma over the years. And again, there's that stigma. So breaking down those walls as a department head, encouraging my officers, listen, it's here for you. This should be viewed the same as going to the gym, focusing on your mental health. It's not just something that you do after an incident or you have a breakdown. It should be constant. And it's not just a therapy aspect. It's quality of life stuff. It's eating right. it's exercising, it's doing things that you like, it's trying to de-stress and those type of things. So focusing on officer mental health, having a provider basically on retainer, doing critical incident debriefs, all these type of things.
It's actually a great idea.
Yeah, so that's incredibly important to me, because if you have officers that aren't well, how are they going to interact with the community?
Yeah.
We've all had bad days, right? And you're not on your best when you're having a bad day. So trying to limit the number of those bad days and make sure that we have healthy, happy officers that are out there, doing a good job. So that was another piece of the puzzle that I want to throw out there. And again, if you're watching this, if you're somebody that's interested in police work, if you're somebody that's interested in the mental health field, but you go, I don't know how to start, or, oh, I need a degree, or I need this or that. You don't. There's so many avenues that somebody sitting at home right now, can take. Reach out. Give me a call. My website, all my contact info's on there. It's Ryan for Windsor, spelled out, RyanForWindsor. I'm sure Patrick's going to stick it down at the bottom right now. But my contact info, my email's there. Go to my website. Give me a call. I love helping people. I love guiding people to where, hey, you can be a part of it. But we need, the Air Force, I'll leave it with this. Air Force core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And I hope that in this position, I can bring that service aspect back to this, at least our community, because there's a lot of people that want to help, and if you kind of can guide them and show them, because we need your help. Law enforcement, we're a staffing crisis. Mental health professionals, we're a staffing crisis. We need you to do something. So, and I'll leave it at that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. As I close this today, a reminder to everyone, it's not just a passion, it's action. We need to make a difference. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I do have my webpage, Paula VanGuilder at gmail.com. Also a Facebook group, My Story's Not Over Yet. Next month, we will have Bob Brasso here with Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And actually, I am going to be doing a special edition. I have had 2 people that are in recovery that want to get out there, and that's huge. You need to see exactly what they're going. So vote, people, because Ryan is exactly what we need to drive what we need. So vote August 9th, the Democratic Party. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
I really
awesome.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.